29 minutes ago, Songyun stuns the industry with a shocking love confession to Songyun. 29 minutes was all it took to send shockwaves through the entire entertainment industry, because when the words finally surfaced, they did not arrive as whispers or speculation, they arrived as a confession so direct and so emotionally charged that even veteran insiders admitted they had never seen anything like it before, and at the center of it all stood Songyun, a star long known for his composure, his restraint, and his careful distance from public romantic narratives, now doing the one thing no one expected him to do at this stage of his career. Hold on tight, the world of your favorite celebrities is unfolding before your eyes, and every moment is more breathtaking than the last. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, because trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. For years, fans had watched the subtle signs accumulate like quiet evidence left behind at airports, award shows, backstage corridors, and unscripted moments caught only by chance, moments where Songyun's presence seemed to soften Songyun's guarded exterior in ways no co-star ever had, yet nothing had ever crossed the line into certainty, nothing had ever been openly claimed, until now. The confession did not come during a flashy press event or a carefully staged announcement, which is precisely why it stunned the industry so deeply, because it unfolded during what was supposed to be a routine appearance, an ordinary moment that suddenly became extraordinary when Songyun paused mid-sentence, his expression shifting from polished professionalism to something far more vulnerable, far more human, as if he had reached a point where silence was no longer an option. Witnesses later described the atmosphere in the room as instantly different, as though everyone sensed something irreversible was about to happen, and when Songyun finally spoke, his voice steady yet unmistakably heavy with emotion, he did not offer evasive answers or playful deflection, he spoke with clarity, intention, and a calm intensity that left no room for misinterpretation. He spoke about timing, about growth, about how some connections enter your life quietly and stay even when the world is loud, and without ever raising his voice or dramatizing his words, he acknowledged what fans had spent years debating, that Songyun was not just someone he worked with, not just someone he respected, but someone who had changed him in ways he never anticipated, someone whose presence grounded him, challenged him, and reshaped how he understood love, responsibility, and emotional courage. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming, not because of scandal, but because of sincerity, because the industry is built on ambiguity and image management, and what Songyun offered in that moment was neither, it was a confession rooted in lived experience rather than performance, and fans felt it instantly. Across social media, reactions poured in at a pace that stunned even analytics teams, with viewers replaying the clip repeatedly, not to look for hidden meaning, but to absorb the weight of his words, the stillness in his posture, the way his eyes reflected years of restraint finally released, and for many, it felt like watching someone choose honesty over protection for the very first time. Songyun, though not present at the moment of the confession, became the emotional center of the conversation within minutes, as fans revisited past interviews, shared old clips, and connected moments that once seemed ordinary but now carried new significance, moments where her quiet support, her emotional intelligence, and her unwavering steadiness appeared again and again, not as coincidence, but as pattern. Industry insiders were quick to note that this was not a confession driven by publicity strategy, pointing out that there were no upcoming joint projects to promote, no obvious commercial incentives, and no scripted follow-ups, which only deepened the impact, because it suggested something far rarer in celebrity culture, a decision made for personal truth rather than public gain. As the hours passed, the narrative continued to grow, not through rumors, but through reflection, as fans shared how the confession resonated with them personally, how it reframed the idea of love not as spectacle, but as patience, presence, and mutual growth, and how seeing a figure like Songyun speak with such emotional responsibility challenged long-standing stereotypes about fame, masculinity, and vulnerability. What made the moment unforgettable was not just the confession itself, but what it represented, a shift from speculation to acknowledgement, from silence to clarity, and from carefully controlled image to authentic expression, and in that sense, the industry was not merely reacting to a love confession, it was responding to a rare act of emotional honesty in a space where such moments are often avoided at all costs. And as the conversation continues to ripple outward, one truth has become impossible to ignore, that whatever comes next, whether confirmation, privacy, or quiet continuation, Songyun's words have permanently changed the way his story with Songyun is understood, not as a rumor, not as a fantasy, but as a deeply human connection that finally stepped into the light, not for attention, but because it was ready to be named. 29 minutes. That was all it took for the entire Chinese entertainment industry to freeze in disbelief, for fan communities to erupt into chaos, and for a confession no one expected to detonate across every platform at once. Songyun had finally spoken, and what he said did not sound like rumor, speculation, or cleverly worded ambiguity. It sounded final, intentional, and impossible to ignore. For years, fans had analyzed every shared glance, every airport farewell, every quiet moment between him and Tan Songyun, wondering if the chemistry they saw was real or carefully staged. But no one was prepared for the moment when Sukai would step forward and remove all doubt with a single, devastatingly honest declaration. It happened during what was supposed to be a routine appearance, a professional setting with familiar questions and predictable answers. Sukai stood calm, composed, almost unusually quiet, as if weighing something far heavier than the event itself. When the question came, it was not dramatic, not provocative, not designed to expose anything. And yet, instead of deflecting or smiling it away, Sukai paused. The silence stretched longer than anyone expected. Cameras continued rolling. The audience leaned forward. In that pause, something shifted. Then he spoke, and the atmosphere changed instantly. His voice was steady, but unmistakably emotional, carrying the weight of a decision that had clearly been considered for a long time. He spoke of Tan Songyun not as a colleague, not as a co-star, not as a convenient narrative, but as someone who had changed him, grounded him, and taught him what it meant to be truly seen in an industry that rarely allows authenticity. He did not rush his words. He did not hide behind vague language. He admitted that what he felt was real, that it was no longer something he wanted to protect with silence, and that pretending otherwise had become harder than facing the consequences of honesty. Within seconds, clips of the confession spread like wildfire. Fans replayed the footage again and again, listening for hidden meanings, watching his expression frame by frame, searching for any sign that this might be misunderstood. But there was none. His eyes did not waver. His tone did not soften into ambiguity. This was not an accident. This was not a slip. This was a choice. And then, as the shock rippled outward, attention turned immediately to Tan Songyun. Where was she when Sukai said those words? Had she known this was coming? Had they discussed it? Was she watching live like millions of fans around the world? When she finally appeared hours later, the answer seemed to come without a single word spoken. Her expression was composed, but her eyes told a story of emotion held carefully in place. Those close to the situation described her as quiet, reflective, deeply moved rather than surprised. She did not deny it. She did not retreat. She did not ask for distance. What stunned fans most was not just the confession itself, but the timing. Coming after months of intense scrutiny, emotional moments, airport scenes that felt too personal to dismiss, and industry whispers that refused to die, Sukai's words felt like the final piece of a puzzle fans had been assembling for years. Suddenly, everything made sense. The protective gestures. The way Tan Songyun always seemed calmer when he was near. The way Sukai's public image softened whenever her name came up. The industry reaction was immediate and divided. Some praised his courage, calling it a rare act of sincerity in a world built on caution and image control. Others warned of backlash, of pressure, of the risks that come with honesty in an unforgiving spotlight. But fans were united in one thing. This was not performance. This was not strategy. This was emotion breaking through years of restraint. As night fell, hashtags continued climbing. Fan letters poured in by the thousands. Old clips resurfaced, now viewed through an entirely different lens. Moments once dismissed as coincidence were reinterpreted as quiet confessions hiding in plain sight. And at the center of it all stood two people who had finally crossed an invisible line, leaving speculation behind and stepping into something real, something vulnerable, something irreversible. Sukai's confession did not answer every question. Instead, it opened a new chapter, one filled with uncertainty, courage, and emotional stakes higher than ever before. And as fans stayed awake refreshing feeds, waiting for Tan Songyun's next move, one truth became impossible to deny. This was no longer about shipping, rumors, or fantasy. This was about two people choosing honesty in a world that rarely rewards it, and an industry that would never look at them the same way again. What truly stunned the industry was not just that Sukai finally spoke, but the timing, the tone, and the unmistakable emotional weight behind his words, because for years fans had watched, waited, and speculated, sensing something unspoken between Sukai and Tan Songyun yet never receiving confirmation strong enough to silence doubt, until that moment, barely 29 minutes earlier, when everything changed in a way no one could have predicted. The confession did not come during a romantic interview or a carefully staged press event, but in a setting that made it even more powerful, a professional gathering where Sukai was expected to discuss upcoming projects, industry plans, and career milestones, yet as questions progressed, his composure subtly shifted, his voice slowed, and the room itself seemed to grow quieter, as if everyone present instinctively sensed that something far more personal was about to unfold. Sukai paused longer than usual before answering, his eyes lowering briefly before lifting again with a resolve that immediately caught attention, and when he spoke, it was not dramatic, not rehearsed, but steady, sincere, and unmistakably real, as he acknowledged that Tan Songyun was not just someone he admired professionally, but someone who had become deeply important to him on a level that went beyond work, beyond rumors, and beyond what he had previously been willing to admit publicly.